Yeah.
There's an Air Force base there. I was stationed there for a year.
Oh, there's Jan
Must live farther
and Marge.
Nice.
And ladies.
Because he said they didn't have anywhere he lived. So.
Well, outside of Tucson, there's a
I'm in a huge amount of snow. I mean, big amount of snow. So.
You guys, okay.
Hey, Marjorie. Hi, Marge.
Hi. Hi.
Want to open up with a prayer and then we can get started. I gotta plug this in somehow. So was just the prayer of the day is on the top of the sheet. I can just read that. Everlasting God, you give strength to the power to the faint. Make us agents of your healing and wholeness, that your good news may be made known to the ends of your creation. Through Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord.
Amen.
Amen. You guys get started. I gotta plug this in before we start.
Let's put this on the window view.
So Isaiah 40. Beginning at verse 21. Have you not known? Have you not heard? Has it not been told to you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent to live in, who brings princes to naught and makes the rulers of the earth as nothing. Scarcely are they planted, scarcely sown, scarcely has their stem taken root in the earth, when he blows upon them and they wither, and the tempest carries them off like stubble. To whom then will you compare me? For who is my equal, says the Holy One. Lift up your eyes on high and see, who created these? He who brings out their hosts and numbers them, calling them all by name, because he is great in strength, mighty in power, not one is missing. Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel? My way is hidden from the Lord, and my right disregarded by my God. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint and strengthens the powerless. Even youths will faint and be weary. The young will fall exhausted. But those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint.
God is all powerful and can do anything.
Well, we've got a few of us here. What are your thoughts on Isaiah today?
I think it tells us to look in the right direction when we need help. Don't count on ourselves. Don't really count on anything else, because God is the only thing that will be there and lift us up and help forever.
What you got, Jan?
Well, my computer wasn't cooperating, so I'm on my tablet. But my computer is still on, so it's making crazy noises.
Oh.
Well, I think that this is just telling us how great God is. And that we should trust him.
How do you like being called a grasshopper?
Yeah.
Pardon?
How do you like being referred to as a grasshopper?
Well,
A grasshopper.
I suppose there's worse.
I do feel like a chicken with my head cut off. That's kind of like a grasshopper, so like bounding around. Relate to that.
Yeah.
Seems like when grasshoppers in the summertime, they move without any reason, jumping here and jumping there, and I'm sure they have reasons and what they're looking for, but they
get eaten by snakes
and birds and
yeah. Go ahead. Somebody was.
Well, I just think that too, it was two of us, live long enough, two of us can't identify with those who question, where is God in all of this? Why is God hiding? Why is God hiding from me? Right? That sense of not knowing where God is, who God is, that's all a part of our faith journey at some point in our lives, I believe. And this is simply saying we can trust God who created the universe, who created all that is, will be there with us. We can trust that.
Yeah, and trust it. I mean, and Isaiah uses this word, "Oh, the Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable." It's almost like, we're just mere grasshoppers, and maybe we're not meant to understand all of the realm of the hidden God, but we are just to trust it. To trust it, even in the midst of the mystery, we are still God's creation. We belong to the Lord.
as Pastor Glenn said, as you get older, I look back and there were times when I was wondering, where are you, God? That I just wasn't looking hard enough. Because he was always there. Always turned out to be there for me in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's comfort in that. Like, even when we can't see God, God is there with us in the nature, in the people, in the community. Like, even when we don't know where to find him, he's there. And there's great comfort in that.
Sure. Oh, well, go ahead.
Well, I just think that, one of my favorite books, mystic writings, is a book written by an anonymous author, probably from Russia or somewhere in the Middle East. It's called The Cloud of Unknowing, and how in our journey with God is important for us to enter into that cloud of unknown. That's part of the journey of faith is recognizing who we are, whether we refer to ourselves as grasshoppers or simply as ones who are not capable of knowing all that God knows. That we can trust, and we can trust the one who does know and knows us, and take comfort in the fact that God does know us. God knows us.
Mm-hmm. Well, should we move on to Psalm 147? Marge or Jan,
Yes.
you want to read?
Oh, well, I don't have it. Oh, now I do.
It's Psalm, you don't have to. I just don't want to leave you out.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Praise the Lord. How good it is to sing praises to our God. How pleasant and fitting to praise him. The Lord builds up Jerusalem. He gathers the exiles of Israel. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. He determines the number of the stars and calls them each by name. Great is our Lord and mighty in power. His understanding has no limit. The Lord sustains the humble, but casts the wicked to the ground. Sing to the Lord with thanksgiving. Make music to our God on the harp. He covers the sky with clouds. He supplies the earth with rain and makes grass grow on the hills. He provides food for the cattle and for the young ravens when they call. His pleasure is not in the strength of the horse, nor his delight in the legs of a man. The Lord delights in those who fear him, who put their hope in his unfailing love. He has done this for no other nation. They do not know his laws. Praise the Lord.
The Bible's study Bible says it's a hymn of praise, obviously. Motifs and themes from other Psalms, from Job and Isaiah, from Isaiah 40 and 66. So we were just in third Isaiah there, that appear in the Psalm. The first part of the Psalm is a call to praise and the reason for praise, which is found in the Lord's power and care. The psalmist joins praise of God's power and wisdom in creation with God's attention to the lowliest and weakest creatures.
Yeah, mine just says about that these are the 5 Psalms that in the Psalter that are the 5 are called the 5 Hallelujah Psalms.
Mm.
And they are the end of the Psalter, and they're written at a time when the people have come back from exile, and these Psalms, these were in essence hymns that were written for them to celebrate their return, to Jerusalem.
Interesting. These, maybe when we come back from this exile called pandemic, we should be reading these Psalms in church.
I could never understand why some churches don't think music is important, or back to the old movie Footloose, where the church didn't want anybody dancing. The Psalms always talk about singing and dancing and praising God with music.
Yes.
I did my internship, Cedar Falls, Iowa, Bethlehem Lutheran, and it was a Danish congregation. They referred to themselves as the Happy Danes, and they one of their traditions was to dance around the Christmas tree in Advent, and they still maintain that tradition. And there was another congregation in town that was Danish, but they were not known as the happy ones. And they did not allow, back in the day, they didn't allow card playing or dancing or anything like that. It's just, so you're right.
I think God wants us to be happy and use music and dancing and praise to him.
Yeah, PBS has that special on the Black Church this month during February. I'm really looking forward to that. And the trailers leading up to it, the one that I always get a kick out of is talking about not that didn't want people to become actors, and this woman says, "What do you think the pastor does when they're up there?" She said,
Oh, wow.
she said, particularly in a black church, I mean, they're using all the acting techniques, available to them to to connect with the congregation and to the and when you are in the presence of a good black preacher, man, it is amazing what what they're able to do with that. And so, yeah.
Well, we're on a. Were you going to say something?
Oh, it's joy, right? Like God wants us to be joyful.
Mm-hmm.
And I get a lot of joy from singing and dancing.
Yeah.
Like life is not always easy, but celebrate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in worship too, I think there's a fine line between reverence and celebration.
Right.
There's a time for each, I think, in worship, and in a setting for both, and sometimes it's really appropriate to be celebratory, and then sometimes it's really appropriate as we're coming up on Lent. I'm thinking, it's a reverent time. Save the celebration comes at Easter, but
I think everything can be perverted, and we just have to do it with reverence and have our mind in the right place.
Yeah, I agree. 1 Corinthians 9:16 through 23.
I can do that.
Okay.
If I proclaim the gospel, this gives me no ground for boasting, for an obligation is laid on me, and woe to me if I do not proclaim the gospel. For if I do this of my own will, I have a reward. But if not of my own will, I am entrusted with the commission. What then is my reward? Just this, that in my proclamation I make the gospel free of charge, so as not to make full use of my rights in the gospel. For though I am free with respect to all, I have made myself a slave to all, so that I might win more of them. To the Jews I became as a Jew, in order to win Jews. To those under the law I became as one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so that I might win those under the law. To those outside the law I became as one outside the law, though I am not free from God's law, but am under Christ's law, so that I might win those outside the law. To the weak I became weak, so that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that I might by all means save some. I do it for the sake of the gospel, so that I may share in its blessings.
Whatever, Paul.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm great. I'm wonderful. Be like me.
I mean, I know what he's trying to say rhetorically, but I have become all things to all people. You cannot possibly be all things to all people all the time. I mean, that's just, and I'm not, we'd have to go further and dig deeper into this, drill down a little bit more, but this is when we pick apart pieces of Paul's letters, he can come across as an arrogant snob sometimes. And he can't possibly be all things to all people. And I don't see how that's possible for us. What he's trying to say, I think, is that it's important to be in relationship with people in order to confess Christ and proclaim the gospel. That's, I think, the large picture of what he's trying to say. But
I think the the scary thing about what he is saying here is that for those of us who aren't as strong in our faith as Paul was, you know, when we try to mingle and go with, we can't. I mean, it is so hard, and those other things can easily pull us astray.
Yes.
And so we have to be careful what we're doing while we're trying to preach God's word or take God's word to the masses, that we don't get corrupted by the masses.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point too. I mean, when we start to talk about gospel versus culture, you know, and to the extent that we can relate the gospel to the culture, that's what we're called to do. But as soon as we become so enculturated in this, then there may be some sacrifice to the true gospel, and that's why we have to be careful, because you can't.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I mean, no, I'm just saying. I mean, it becomes so easy for us to be so worldly that we lose sight of what the gospel's telling us.
Have you ever done a word study on? I haven't, and I just thought of it now that I wonder why I haven't done it in my years of ministry. Of doing a word study on the Greek word for win here, because that's, of all the words that are here.
Would you say win?
Win. That I might win those, you know,
win the weak.
Those under the law. I might win those who are weak. I might win, you know, and that.
Well, if you go further down, verse 24, he's really referring to. I mean, do you not know that in a race, the runners all compete, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win it. Athletes exercise self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath. I mean, he's referring to the Olympics here, guys. Mm-hmm. But we an imperishable one. So I do not run aimlessly, nor do I box. Again, that's an Olympic sport.
Mm-hmm. It was one of the four.
As though beating the air, but I punish my body and enslave it, so that after proclaiming to others, I myself should not be disqualified. So I think he's using, this is where his rhetoric comes in. He's doing exactly what I was just saying. He's using the culture.
Right. He's comparing comparing this to the Olympics that were going on.
He's using it as a metaphor.
Yeah, the original Olympics did take place at the time of the tournament, you know, at that time. And these are races, or what he's speaking of. I think and
the Greek word I was going to point out for running, I believe, is actually controlled fall. It's the process of controlling your fall, moving forward but not falling, and that's when he says self-control. That's also a Stoic ideal. The Stoics wanted to control their own bodies, but you know, we could really get into it here with Corinthians.
Yeah.
But
and I mean, the other piece in that is then, for me, is with today's text. I mean, the metaphor, I think, is one, you know, but then, you know, Paul gets into, and, you know, he goes into all this stuff about how, you know, it isn't about him, but then he uses that language again, like that I might, you know, I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some, you know, as if he is doing the saving.
Right.
Yeah. You know, that just, you know, goes so contrary to, you know, what, in a lot of ways, what the texts are about today, which talk about, You know, it isn't us. You know, we don't know. We're grasshoppers. And you know, it's like Paul forgot he's a grasshopper.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's where I say he does come across as arrogant sometimes, but you know, he does many times. He talks about his experience, his transformative experience from Saul to Paul, and you know, he does have this license, so to speak, that many don't, to proclaim the gospel. And the other thing going on too is there's other people proclaiming a false gospel. That happens. He talks more about that in Galatians, but I don't know. I mean, I love studying Paul, but sometimes, yeah, he comes across.
I didn't like Paul very much at all until I did a deeper study of Romans a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
I came to appreciate him more.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you. I think he is arrogant.
He can be. Out of all of the people in the Bible besides Jesus, I would love to meet Paul. I think it would be a fascinating conversation.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear about his travels and his shipwrecks and everything else. But
maybe since he is one of the few people, you know, to encounter Jesus after the resurrection. I mean, 5,000 people saw him, but I mean, to encounter and talk to him, maybe he did have a faith so strong that it was unmovable.
yeah, well, I think the other piece to this is we got to keep in mind he was from Tarsus. He's from modern day Turkey, so he has a connection to the Greek culture, but he was also a high up on the Jewish authority list. So he has entree into different contexts that a lot of these other apostles do not. And so he was well traveled. He would have known Hebrew. He would have known Greek. He had a lot of education for.
Well, and he's almost the antithesis of Jesus in the sense that Jesus had very little worldly power. You know, I mean, he had power amongst the poor, the outcasts, in terms of bringing about healing, but in terms of the kind of status, when I say worldly power, I mean power that's based on status, power that's based on education, rather than on what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I think that's what, and in that respect, I have a lot of respect for Paul. Paul is willing to set aside all of that. He has the humility to set aside all of that to proclaim the gospel.
Yeah.
Because he knows that all of that has gotten him, in the eyes of God, in the eyes of Christ, has gotten him little or nothing. But he's willing to set it all aside.
But at the end of the day, we have to remember that he was transformed by God, not himself.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, the scales over his eyes, you know, and then they fall off. He can finally see, you know, the way and follow the Lord after being blinded. But I don't know. Don't get me started on Paul. We could.
I attended some virtual ordinations last fall, and at least one of them used these first few verses in the ordination for new pastors. right? It's this like obligation and like sense of the gospel that I can't not say it. I just have to share it. Before you get into the whole like boast part in verse 20. But
well, I think the other piece in that is it's how depending on how you read it too, is that Paul is saying, he didn't have any say in or any control in where he was to preach the gospel. There were times when he was called to preach it to the powerful, as we saw in Athens and in Jerusalem. There are other times, many more times, that he is called to portray it to the captives, to the slaves, the imprisoned.
If Paul was here in North America, where do you think he would choose to preach?
I think he would go where he sensed being called to go, and I think it would be interesting because I could see him. I could see him going to some of these large churches and saying, on the one hand, but on the other hand, I see him going, going down on South 24th Street, down in amongst the immigrants, or.
See, I think he would go to places like Capitol Hill. I think he would go to Vegas.
Yeah.
I think he'd go to New Orleans. I think he'd go to Seattle.
Yeah, things are going on.
I think he would go, and I think he'd go to. I think he would go to the major metropolitan areas, but also the ones that are really known for their
corruption,
high profile. Yeah. I don't know, but
I was thinking about Paul and the fact that he was specifically chosen by Christ, and that's why he had such a strong faith. But then I think each one of us are specifically chosen by Christ and told to go out and do exactly what Paul did. So we should all have the strength that Paul had to share his faith.
mm-hmm.
I guess the only place I'd say with that, Rod, is that not all of us were given, because I think God calls us according to the gifts we are given, and not all of us are given the same gifts that Paul was given. And
I guess what I'm saying is just use what gifts you have in the settings that you're in.
Right.
And
yeah.
Or the opportunities you're given. Just, if you're called to be a missionary, go and do that and do the best job you can. What
if you're Patrick Mahomes? He's on a cereal box.
Yes, he is.
You get people like that. Now go ahead.
Part of a footnote that I have is Paul realizes that he must with rigor serve the Lord and battle against sin. If he fails in this, he may be excluded from the reward. So did he feel as though he would be excluded from God if he didn't pull through?
Well,
no, I don't think he.
If you read Romans,
he's not. I don't believe Paul's going there. It's not. But again, that he feels excluded from God, but what he feels is not the same as what God does. And I think that's, you have to keep that in mind. what we feel is not what God does.
Okay.
And that is why in many of Paul's epistles, it seems like he stresses doing good work for God. And in some senses, it seems like he's saying you need to work hard to earn your place in heaven. But then in others, he talks about God's grace. So it's...
Well, I think he falls in a category what I would call the third use of the law, where it's what we do because it's what we get to do because we have been saved. And I think he feels urgency. He feels a sense of urgency to do a lot of his ministry because of what he's experienced in these congregations, but also if you read First Thessalonians, it's pretty clear that Paul thinks that Jesus will arrive again in his lifetime, and you get a sense of that urgency from that letter. But I think it's not the sense that I have to do this in order to be saved. It's I have to do this because I have been saved, and this is a passion of mine.
Woe to me if I do not proclaim the gospel! Exclamation point.
Yeah. Well, let's read about Peter's mother-in-law. Everybody wants to read about her mother-in-law. I mean, as soon as they left the synagogue, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they told him about her at once. He came and took her by the hand and lifted her up. Then the fever left her, and she began to serve them. That evening at sundown, they brought to him all who were sick or possessed with demons, and the whole city was gathered around the door. And he cured many who were sick with various diseases, and cast out many demons, and he would not permit the demons to speak, because they knew him. In the morning, while it was still very dark, he got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed. And Simon and his companions hunted for him. When they found him, they said to him, "Everyone is searching for you." He answered, "Let us go on to the neighboring towns, so that I may proclaim the message there also, for that is what I came out to do." And he went throughout Galilee, proclaiming the message in their synagogues and casting out demons.
So this is right after last week's text, right?
Correct.
So he heals the man of the unclean spirit in the synagogue, goes home to Simon and Andrew's house.
Yeah. I mean, this part of Mark describes a Jesus with so much energy, it wears you out just reading it. I mean, it's a whirlwind. I mean, the next verse 40, a leper came to him, begging him and kneeling. He said to him, "If you choose, you can make me clean." Moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand, touched him, and said to him, "I do choose to be made clean." I mean, it just keeps going and going.
Yeah, they don't use the word "ear" in this. The other translations use the word "immediately," and I forget how many times. How many times in Mark the word, the Greek word that can be translated immediately is used.
Well, again, you get a sense, I mean, in Mark's gospel, more than any of the other ones, you get the sense of urgency in Jesus's mission, that he doesn't have time to spare. There's no downtime. I mean, Jesus goes to a deserted place and there he prayed. I mean, you almost have compassion for Jesus, because when does this guy get a break?
Yeah. I think it was a choice to put that in, right? This whole thing about him leaving to pray by himself and everybody having to go find him. and then him saying, all right, let's go. Like, no, this was important that he went and sort of like prepared himself for this exhausting journey ahead of him because he knew that it was going to be long and hard.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Luther would say. You know, you can't, your life is so busy, the best thing to do is to sit down and pray. I mean, and then
his quote said that I get up in the morning and I always pray for an hour, except when I'm really busy, and then I pray for 2.
Yeah. Well, in a way, you know, prayer centers us and helps us process the things that we need to do in a way that maybe we're more confident in God's hand in what we're doing after we pray. So Peter was married, which is interesting.
Yeah, I wonder in verse 36 it says Simon and his companions hunted for him. I'm wondering if like and his companions was like and his wife and children, or you know, like who are those companions that are unnamed?
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it adds a level of reality to Peter. Even, you know, he's, to me, you know, he's more accessible as a human being when it describes the relationships he has in his life. And he's got a mother-in-law. You know, which is interesting because you think of the Roman Catholic Church and how they model their priests after St. Peter, but they don't allow their priests to get married. Well, Peter was married. What greater argument do you need to get your priests to have, I don't know, don't repeat that, anybody. I'll get in trouble from the diocese.
I think we're get a billboard out.
Let your priest get married.
No.
What do you guys make of the fact that Mark likes to lift up the fact that Jesus casts out demons? He makes it there's no mystery about this. There's demons all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And they know who Jesus is.
I think, like I said, Sunday is, I think one of the reasons, I don't think it's the only thing, but one of the reasons is that Mark wants it to be known that the demons had no power, no control over Jesus. And,
yeah, that was an interesting point you made.
When you said that, you know, because that was the thinking of that day, that if you knew, you know, it was even on a personal level, if you knew someone's name, you had some power over them, you had control over them. So if you knew a God's name, you had control over that God, you had some power over them. And so I think, you know, for Mark, it's a matter of really lifting up the power of Jesus to overcome evil, overcome the demons.
I think there's also a tension. I was just writing this note down. There's a tension in this text between people who are searching for Jesus and the Jesus who chooses to go out and search for them. Mm-hmm. And so it's, you know, who finally wins in the end. I mean, I think it's Jesus that goes out. I think it's important to know that it's Jesus that chooses intentionally to go out. He said, let us go on to the neighboring town so that I may proclaim the message there also, for that is what I came out to do. He is letting himself, he is opening himself up for people to come to him. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's a powerful message. That's almost a more powerful message to me than it is, he healed a mother-in-law, he cast out demons. We have a God and Jesus that opens himself wide open for us, no matter what. I mean, that's the real miracle.
Well, and that this is whether you say the Son of God, the God, the God who comes to us. It's not, like I also said Sunday, it was, I mean, part of the reason that the scribes were seen as not having much authority is that, they didn't have any personal authority. Their authority was all wrapped up in the temple and getting people to go to the temple and make sacrifices and add to the coffers of the temple.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about them. It wasn't about them personally. Where Jesus comes and says, it is about you.
Mm-hmm.
It is, God's kingdom is at hand. God's kingdom is here amongst you, not just in the Holy of Holies in the temple. And I think, I'm trying to remember, is
I think that's, you alluded to it, that's what's so important about God. And Jesus showed it. He doesn't sit in one place and make us go to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes to us,
Mm-hmm.
either sending people out to us or getting us. He gave us the Holy Spirit. I mean, he wants us. He does everything to get us to know him and love him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And Mark, and I was thinking this was the case, and Mark is the gospel where that talks about the curtain in the temple, the curtain that kept the Holy of Holies, would keep God separate, because that's where they kept the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
And it kept God separate. At Jesus' death, that temple, that curtain is torn in two.
3:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah, and I mean, and we're talking, we're talking one heavy curtain.
Yeah, we touched on that last week in confirmation class. We talked about the crucifixion, and I don't know if the students caught it or not, but I had a map of Jerusalem, and on that map was a little picture of the temple, and you could see the inner sanctum, the holiest of the holies. And I pointed out that this is where the priest of the high priest of the temple is allowed to go in once a year. Mm-hmm. I forget which festival it is, but I think it's a festival of booths, isn't it? I don't know.
I forget. Yeah.
And he's able to go in there once a year, but nobody else. And then there's a hierarchical system all the way back to the back side of that temple where people of different levels can go. Well, that temple being torn in two is symbolic of, emblematic of God's accessibility to all people, not just the one holy man. It's the priesthood of all believers. And, there's not one human being that's closer to God than the rest. Sorry, Pope.
Yeah.
But, well, you ladies are quiet.
Well, I didn't have anything important to say. I was just listening.
You always have important things to say, Mark.
No, I'm trying to learn.
Well, at least you turned your video on. Now we can see you.
Yes.
I know, I didn't have it on. I know.
It is good to see you guys.
Good to see you guys.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be wonderful when everything is back open and we can sit and laugh around the table? You girls missed out on some Ghirardelli chocolate that I brought today.
Oh.
You know what? I'm the one person that doesn't care for chocolate, so you can all have my share.
it's
Thank you.
interesting too that Jesus is still healing on the Sabbath. He heals Peter's mother-in-law. It's still Sabbath, isn't it?
And all these people come
And all these
that
people.
same day.
So, I mean, it's Jesus breaking down the barriers of the law in order to achieve his distribution, means of grace.
My footnote says that Jesus and the disciples probably went there for a meal, since the main Sabbath meal was served immediately following the synagogue service.
There you go.
Yeah.
Boy, they needed to get her healed quick.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
That's what I was thinking.
Well,
People use this to say like, oh yes, because she gets up and cooks for them after she's healed. It says that.
well, and she gets up and serves them. I mean, wow, what a healing power that must have been.
I think it also speaks, it's not just she's empowered to do that. She wants to do that. That's part of her identity. And that just means she's not just healed, but she's a whole human being after this.
Yeah, the daily discipleship words are really, point that out. Her servant attitude, Jesus' servant attitude, they live that out.
Gives her purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, you could critique this through, today's lens and say, well, that's a real sexist thing to say the woman has to do the cooking. But back in this context, that was what she wanted to do. I mean, this is her calling.
Right.
Well,
thank you very much.
Yeah. Should we close with the Lord's Prayer?
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread.
Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us.
Lead us not
In temptation,
from
thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
Thanks, girls.
Really great to see you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
Good to see you,
you.
Marge.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Have a great day.
Yeah.
Thank
Oh,
you.
you too.
All right, bye-bye.
Stay warm tomorrow and the next week.